is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Cataclysm Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.cataclysm.com. Our special guest tonight is legendary drummer Carl Cannedy. Many people know him from, of course, the legendary Rods, and you guys are a real working class band out of New York. Are you still living in New York these days?
I'm actually in Scranton, Pennsylvania now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. Not too far, though. We still are based out of Portland, and it's about an hour and 10-minute drive for me, but it's all highway, so it's all good.
So before we get going, Carl, I'd like to ask how you're doing with all this COVID-19 stuff going on and everything else.
It's the myriad of emotions. I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
I'm worried about it. Not so much for myself, but I'm worried for people around me. I have two 96-year-old neighbors. He drives still.
Oh, wow.
And they're very healthy. But, I try to do as much shopping for them as I can. And, I got them masks. I got them sanitizer.
Wow.
And, but, it's still a case of you worry about them because at 96, they've survived a lot of things. And, you hate to see somebody go out with something that could maybe be avoided.
That's super cool of you to help like that. Now, the other reason I ask is because, like I said, I thought you were from New York, and New York's just been hit really hard. And the other reason is, unfortunately, because of all this going on, a lot of stuff is still shut down. They're not allowing anybody to perform live or anything. What is that like been for you, kind of having that fear of not knowing when you're going to be able to do it again?
It's that way for every working musician, I think.
Yeah.
It's really disappointing. Today I had a call with a Main Street Music Series, and we do this every couple of years. It's a huge outdoor show, and we headline, and we really look forward to it because it's a hometown thing, and there's lots of people, and we've had people from around the country, from Canada coming in, but it's just a great event, and it was July 3rd, so we were really looking forward to it, and they just decided that it's just too tight. They can't do it. So we may do a live date sometime later in August.
Cool.
But right now it's done, and it's disappointing. Around here in Scranton, duos and singles are starting to open up some outdoor shows. Starting to do some things. But I play with the Jeffrey James Band, and I have for 22 years here.
Oh, wow.
8-piece horn band. And so when I'm not on the road, I'm playing with Jeffrey James. And we play regularly. And for us, 8-piece band, forget it. We have a lot of jobs that are gone by the wayside because of the fact that it's not going to happen. So
now, what's that like? Because, for a guy like you that's pretty heavy drummer, a real physical player, playing like in a jazz band, that's got to be quite different,
It's funny, the bass player, Tony, who joined Jeffrey James 6 years ago, is the bass player in Cannedy. And Tony's a great singer as well.
Wow.
And he sang, I did a tribute, and was asked to do a contribute a song for the Gods. Excuse me. And so Tony actually was the singer on that, Gotta Keep It Running. So if you look for it on iTunes or Amazon or whatever, you'll find
We'll do that.
Gotta Keep It Running by Cannedy. But Tony's been in the band, and Tony, went into this when he heard a Black Sabbath album. It went into a parallel universe, which was all heavy music.
Oh, wow.
And so when he joined Jeffrey James, he had no clue about any kind of pop music. But he and I are both metal guys, so we play and we laugh because I'll play some crazy fill, and we just look at each other and we say Motown because there's a Motown medley we do, and I play crazy double bass stuff in some of it, and he laughs. I go, no, it's just like the record, Tony. It's Motown. And so we just crack up about that. But I get to play, pretty crazily in Jeffrey James within the confines of the music, but, we find a way to make it rock, and so it's not...
Well, you know what I dig?
It's a problem.
You know what I dig about that is that there are some guys that would be like... well, no, I'm just strictly a metal guy or hard rock guy, and I'm just going to stick to that. But I also think when you kind of go outside your comfort zone, it's cool too because it allows you the opportunity to do something a little different from what you typically do. And then I also think it shows your diversity as a musician because, and it probably helps you get a lot more gigs that way, being a little more open to what you're willing to do.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and it's true. I started learning pop music, before I started taking lessons, I learned pop music, and it was all Hal Blaine, really. They were all hits. But at one point I was thinking, maybe I should, I don't know if I love this, maybe I should leave Jeffrey James. And my daughter is the one who, this was probably 15 years ago, she said, you love playing your drums.
Yeah.
And so Jeffrey James allows you to play. You like all the guys. And so I rethought it, and then I started looking at it as, why don't I dissect all the music, what the drummers are doing, and it has made me a better player, because now I've delved into so many different styles, tried to understand them. It's broadened my horizons, and then I use it within the confines of Jeffrey James, and it's really helped my playing. So it was, thank my daughter for keeping me on track and not letting me get a big head about, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this or whatever. You know, like, no, you need to play your drums. That's what you love. So I agree with what you're saying. It's absolutely true.
It kind of reminds me of Rudy Sarzo. For years, people known him from playing with like Whitesnake and Quiet Riot and Ozzy.
Right.
And now he's become more of a journeyman. He's played with everybody from like Blue Oyster Cult, and he even played on the most recent like Guess Who album, if you can believe that.
Oh, I can. Yeah, he's a great player. I mean, if you're a talented musician, you're going to be able to play anything.
And now getting back to what we were talking about today is your new album by the band Cannedy, which is your name. Now let me ask you about that. When you first formed the band, was it more of a solo project? Like, did you kind of think after all these years I want to do a solo album, or because like I watched your latest video for the song Warrior, and it's definitely your name on it, and you definitely noticed you in the band, Carl, but it has a real band kind of image to it.
Well, that's exactly right. I did Headbanger as a solo project. I was the one who wrote all the material, produced it, and and I was really just not fun to work with. I would never want to work with someone like me again. I was insecure. I was even egotistical. I was a hack player. I was, just not a pleasant guy to work with. So I didn't want to do a solo project again. And actually, I didn't start this band. These guys had been in a band called Totally Lost Cause, TLC for short, but none of the hot babes in that group, just these guys. So Totally Lost Cause, and these guys, had done albums. They're re-releasing Original Sin, and probably whatever albums, I think they've done at least one or two others on Heaven and Hell Records, but Original Sin, I believe, is coming out soon.
Okay.
So they were doing a TV show, and Tony, being in the Jeffrey James band, their drummer wasn't working out. Tony said, hey, we have a TV show. Can you help us out? So we rehearsed for that. We liked it. We just said, hey, maybe we should just start writing some material, see how it goes. So we got together at the studio, and once a week, and which was never once a week because everybody's busy, but we tried. Every Monday we tried to get together, and we found after a year and a half that not only had we written an album we were proud of, but we became a band. So even though it has my name, it was never intended to be my band, and
that's very interesting. That's very interesting to find out. Now let me ask you: was it more of a, like maybe a label or a management or somebody saying, well, he's kind of got the name, so let's go with that, or how did you just decide to call it Cannedy? Because it was simply a solo project.
I think it was, first of all, I had already done Headbanger, so there was some groundwork laid. People know me and so on. So it was a continuation of what, I had done, and, the fact that being in the Rods, I've done a lot of interviews. I do most of the interviews, actually. Very interesting, so it was just a continuation, and it was just decided that we would do that because we're a baby band. Even as Cannedy, we're a baby band. I mean, if you weren't helping us now with this, I mean, how would we get the music out? There's nowhere to play. So, you're as some other people are just helping us, but it's not like if we go and play a gig somewhere that we're going to have thousands of people who know us. We're building it now. We're hoping that we will be able to play because I think we're strong live. But we're a baby band. So the decision was made that, we should probably just continue with the Cannedy moniker. I mean, they have Totally Lost Cause, TLC, which they'll do another album under that name. And so that's how it came about. It was no big ego thing, and it was not necessarily as contrived as, we better do it under Cannedy and we'll get more traction. No. It was just, let's do it as a continuation. And I didn't take your comment as such, but I was
it's because, like I said, I remember when the last album came out, and it was more of even people talking in the press, it was looked at more as a solo album. And like I said, I was watching the new video, and just watching the video myself, I thought, this has a real kind of real band feel to it.
It really really doesn't. And live, everybody, you know, we all played our parts. We didn't overproduce this album. And live, we can duplicate it.
Yeah.
And that's great for me. You know, we did one gig. We headlined one gig, and it went really well. And so, you know, I'm excited to get the band back out because we can deliver this album from first song to last. And not many of the projects I've been involved with, you're able to do that. Usually you overproduce, or somebody's really reaching for a part that they really can't duplicate live, you know. So I'm excited about it.
And now you said when you were putting together the last album, you kind of felt yourself that you were very hard to work with. But I'm sure that, you know, when you're kind of putting out your solo effort, or first thing you've kind of really done outside of the rods, and your name's going to be put on it, you first of all, there's certain things that you want to do a little differently. Okay, I've been with the rods all these years. I'm going to, you know, make kind of a project of my own. I want to kind of do what I want to do, and I want it to make sure it's, you know, the best it can possibly be. So I'm sure that had a huge part to, you know, do with your attitude and everything in making the album.
It did. I mean, nonetheless, I was a prick to work with. But it was still, you know, I mean, I have certain production values. I've done over 40 albums. There's a certain...
I think you even shared with me the last time that you were involved with one of Anthrax's early albums as far as being the producer on it.
Yeah, actually, Spreading the Disease, Fistful of Metal, and Armed and Dangerous with Anthrax.
Wow. And so, what do you think of what Anthrax has kind of become since those albums? Because, you know, they've had at least three different vocalists at one time or another come through the band.
Well, I think I've always had tremendous respect from the first time I met them. And when we were in the studio doing Spreading the Disease, they had a singer they brought in, and, you know, after a week, he just was young. He wasn't really the guy.
Yeah.
And when I said that to them, they immediately said, "Get Johnny on the phone." I got Johnny on the phone, and they talked to him. And 5 minutes later, they said, "John wants to talk to you." And John said, "Put him on a bus." So there they were.
Wow.
With the album that's going to get them to the next level with no lead singer. And fortunately, through Andrew Duck McDonald, my friend on the Thrasher album and guitarist in Blue Cheer, he suggested Joey Belladonna, so I contacted Joey. Joey came in, and it was obvious from that point on that it made the band unique. And I still feel that way, that as great as the singers have been in Anthrax, and I love Neil. I don't know John Bush, but I love Neil, and hopefully, you know, Neil and I talk regularly, and hopefully he and I are going to do something. But Neil is really finally coming into his own, and I'm really proud of the guy. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I mean, Neil Turbin, like, he's known kind of as the ex-Anthrax singer, you know, but like you said, that's not a tag he wears, you know, like, oh, I'm the guy from Anthrax. He is really, like you said, for years it was Neil Turbin and the Death Riders, but he's really kind of...
he's
developed his own
out.
Yeah, which is cool. And that's got to be cool that you were part of that, because, you know, although they've had many singers, like you said, I think really Joey is a guy for the simple fact that they've gone back to him so many times. It's like, okay, that's obvious, that's the guy, you know?
Well, to me, Joey is the identity of the band. And I think with John Bush, they were great. You know, it wasn't like they weren't a great band. And John Bush wasn't a great singer. But there's something about Joey and the way those guys play and write that just puts it over the top. It gives them a different identity. With John Bush, they were more of I don't want to say a generic, but they were, you know, they weren't as unique, if you will, as they are with Joey. And Joey's just got a great voice, and he brings a different approach to it, and he's got a great energy. So, all things said, for me, Joey is the voice of Anthrax, the identity.
I even think John Bush is much better off being back with, you know, Armored Saint. And speaking about Joey kind of being the, you know, voice of Anthrax, I will say this, before I really started following Anthrax, like a lot of people, I used to read about them like in, you know, Hit Parader and all that, and Metal Edge, and you'd see the guys in the band, and Scott was always the one doing interviews, so a lot of people for years thought like Scott Ian was a singer. Come to find out, no, he's a guitar player, and this other guy Joey's a singer, and it's kind of also interesting because for years, you know, they've been like a real hardcore metal band, but then they kind of went off and did their pop thing. They got into the rap. I was kind of curious, what did you think about the rap stuff they did?
From day one, and it was interesting for me to see, like, not on Married with Children, and not becoming a cultural in the zeitgeist. It was interesting for me to see that, because from day one, that's everything. I have a book where I paid their per diems for the Spreading the Disease album.
Wow.
So I paid their per diems for a period of time because Johnny wasn't up here, and so I just fronted all that money myself. And so the book, the composition book, Scott wrote the Not book on it.
Oh, wow.
And, every day they had to sign for their per diems, and pretty soon they were signing, Abraham Lincoln, Mickey Mouse,
oh, wow.
Albert Einstein. It's hysterical how from early they signed their names initially, but as the days went by, it was just a ridiculous name they were writing down.
That's
but
amazing.
The whole Not thing was there, early on, and they were playing Public Enemy. Scott was into Public Enemy. Charlie was into Public Enemy.
Yeah, that's how that all came about, obviously. Yeah.
Billy Milano, when he would visit, they were all into that from day one. So for me, I never saw that as anything but logical.
To
go that direction.
You got some great stories there to tell. Now, getting back to the latest album with Cannedy, the single and the video I've seen is for the song, the title track "Warrior." So let's talk a little bit about the video, because I watched the video and it's a great performance piece, but then there's also kind of like a background story. You see videos of different clips being played. Talk a little bit about the video and the song.
Well, I think the song, Michael had written the lyrics, and it's very personal to him. I think he certainly felt all of that, experienced all of that, and there's a point when, for him being a metal guy, when grunge hit, suddenly there were no guitar solos.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
It was like overnight. Flannel shirt, no guitar solos. Look down at your feet and sing some pretty depressing lyrics for some of the bands. Now, that's not saying Nirvana wasn't fantastic, and some of the bands, Soundgarden and so on. But I'm just saying, in general, it hit hard, and it was the changing of the guard. It totally, the landscape for hard rock, heavy metal was totally gone. For that period of time, and I think it was very hard. So, for him, that's what he felt like, and I think he's back 100%, and that's his kind of take on it.
I remember that time period specifically because a lot of the bands I loved listening to all of a sudden were no longer popular. All of a sudden, people were throwing away their Motley Crue albums. And then they got a new singer, and they were so unpopular for about 4 or 5 years. And it took about 10 years for that all to kind of go full circle.
Yeah.
But some of those bands, like you mentioned, it's kind of amazing. Nirvana, okay, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, those were kind of the cream of the crop as far as the grunge bands. And let's look at it for a minute, because all of a sudden they stopped signing, hard rock and hair bands, and they even a lot of the metal bands. They started having this cookie cutter thing where record companies, we're only going to sign grunge bands. And so they tried to so that's all they were signing, and a lot of it was copycat stuff. But like those bands we mentioned, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, those were the cream of the crop. And yet, those three bands also, if you look at, interesting enough, their lead singers have all committed suicide one way or another. I mean, Chris Cornell, Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, drug overdose. But yet the music, those are the, I'd say top 3 grunge bands that have survived.
Yeah, they were originators, they weren't copycats. They had their own thing, and, they were great. And I think that that stands the test of time. But there were a lot of bands. But what you're talking about is exactly what has been the kiss of death of record labels, and why I think at this point there's a lot of noise out there, and it's hard to rise above it as an artist, but you have the freedom to try to find your way, whereas back then you were basically stuck with record labels. You bottlenecked. If a label didn't pick you up, a major label, you were kind of doomed to selling X number of records. There was a glass ceiling, but it was not very possible to break through it. Now you can get a shopping cart, throw somebody in it with a little video camera, walk down the street singing it, do a great recording in your bedroom, and you might go viral.
You just never know. And see, that's the thing I will say. I mean, who doesn't want to have a big-time label behind you? But at the same time, that's not something as that really happens that much these days as it was when you were coming up with the rods and that. I mean,
that's right.
And the thing of it is, in a way, I think many of the labels screwed themselves because, like you said, if you got a little bit of talent, you got bandmates that are equally talented, you got the songs. I mean, you don't really need a label. And the cool thing about that, if you can do it, if you're able to do it, if Carl, a lot more money in your pocket than going to some guy at the record label,
Right. Yeah, no, that's right. And like for Cannedy, we signed with Sleazy Rider. I've worked with them before. Honest label. They do a great job. And so, I was like, this is a good place for us for our first album.
Yeah, and everybody knows a band like the Rods. You guys have, you've struggled. You've been around for years. But I think part of the reason you guys have been able to survive all these years is because, number one, you are a working class band, and you're never one of those poser bands that try to, okay, we're gonna start being the flavor of the month. We're gonna start, forget about being a metal band. We're just gonna do what sells. You stay true to who you were.
Right. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we have, and I think looking back on it now, that's probably what I'm most proud of. I think we've written some really good songs over the years, but most importantly, we've stayed true. I think Brotherhood of Metal. If you listen to the Rods album or the Rock Hard album, the very first album we did, and you listen to Brotherhood of Metal, you'll see a progression of, I think we're better musicians. I think our songwriting is better lyrically and musically, but you could play those albums back to back, and you wouldn't go, wow, is that the same band? You would go, wow, this is just the same band they've just improved, and it's a progression. And just
to give people an idea of what we're talking about, I mean, you guys were formed back in the 70s. I mean, what year was, like, the first album? Do you even remember what year that came out?
That was the Rock Hard album. Was, let's see, 1980.
Oh, wow. And then, a lot of people probably think a band like the Rods had it easy because, your singer was a cousin of course, Ronnie James Dio. And Ronnie, I know, played on an album or two of yours, and he helped you guys out. But to me, the Rods, that really had nothing to do with it. I mean, it might have helped a little, but, you guys really, you had the goods yourself,
We did. I mean, Ronnie really didn't... even though David and Ronnie were cousins in the early days, Ronnie was busy with his career.
Of course,
he didn't really have time to help the Rods in any way. It wasn't until later, later in our career, but and later in his career. But in the early days, we were on our own. I think it helped in certain ways for press because there was a story. Oh, this is Ronnie's cousin. And so that helped in that regard to get us some press. But
and in fact, overall, I think one of the final things he did with you was right before he died. I forget what that album was, but he appeared on a track. Vengeance, yes. And can you believe it's been almost 10 years? I mean, it's been 10 years since he's passed.
It's been 10 years. It's hard to believe, and it's sad because he had a lot of plans, and it would have been great. Even he sang The Code with the Rods, and he sang another Rod song called Metal Will Never Die, which was on David's solo album. But it would have been great, like at some point if we were performing to have Ronnie come and guest. I mean, how huge would that have been? Have him sing those songs live. And
I mean, he left a huge legacy behind, and I will say this, that I got to go see this a number of years ago now, but in Anaheim, California, at Disneyland, I got to go see his surviving bandmates with Tim Owens and Oni Logan perform as Deal with Disciples. And I'd never seen anything. These guys, let's be honest, everybody's in it to make a living, but those musicians were playing those songs that night for the love of Ronnie, and they're really doing it from the heart. I'd never seen anything like this. It was like the whole audience was up on their feet. It was almost like Electric Church.
And we did with the Vengeance album, we did 30-some dates with Dio Disciples.
Wow.
And those guys are fantastic. Ronnie's band, not only were they great musicians, but
great friends.
Simon Wright. I mean, they loved Ronnie. They were all brothers and true family. And Ronnie was lucky; he surrounded himself with great musicians who were also great friends.
Now let me ask you. So this, like you said, the new Cannedy album, Warrior, it really is more of like a band effort. So talk about some of the guys in the band and how you all came together.
Well, as I was mentioning, they were actually a band, and they had started reforming to, possibly do another album. And they brought me in doing the TV show, and we built it from there. But Tony plays with me in the Jeffrey James Band, the 8-piece horn band, and he's phenomenal. He and I locked in together from day one because even though we're playing
real rhythm section,
songs, we're a powerful rhythm section, and. Charlie and Tony have worked together, as they have with Mike, but Charlie's written a guitar book. he's a GIT grad. He's a monster guitarist. He's not just a play a chord and then play a riff over it. I mean, he orchestrates his parts. He's a brilliant player, and he's a great arranger as far as his parts go. And then Mike is one of those singers who not only has a great voice, but he can do it night after night. He can nail what he sings, and so he's like, and he doesn't have LSD. He doesn't have lead singer's disease.
Wow,
he's
that's
a good guy. And
yeah.
No, that says a lot because so many do, and
let me ask you.
It's great to work with these guys.
So you would consider this like the second Cannedy album, and I was kind of curious. Did you guys get a chance to perform live behind the last album a lot?
For my first Cannedy album?
Yeah.
No, I never. We talked about it. Some of my friends who performed on it were, so great, but everybody's busy, and in order to do something like that, it's a very costly venture, and you really would need a promoter who was willing to take a chance, and there's nobody out there to put up that kind of money. So
again,
it really didn't happen.
Because again, my next question would be like, I imagine if things ever get back to normal as far as performing live, you've got a great album behind you now, and I was kind of curious, would you play material from both albums, or do you think you'd primarily stick to performing the newer material?
That's a good question. I mean, right now we'll just do the album. If we need more time, I would say we would look at our catalog, my catalog, their catalog, and see if there's anything that would enhance the Cannedy band live set. I think we would do that.
Again, it's kind of interesting, like when you look at the singer you're working with, because I remember a number of years ago, Tony Iommi, he put out this great soul album where he had different singers like Phil Anselmo and just different guys, and he had a different guy in each track, and they're all great songs, but as a whole, since you have different singers on each track, it kind of is a weird sounding album, and some guys are able to pull that off and some aren't. It just kind of depends. And so if your singer's good enough, he could maybe possibly cover material from both albums. It just depends, what he's able to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He could cover any of those songs. So, like I said, it's just a question of if that material would fit what the Cannedy band is doing. But Mike can handle it all. And now we were a little late getting started today, Carl, because you were working on a video. I was kind of curious. Could you talk at all about that? Is that a new track for this? Well, I think that, and I appreciate your patience on that. It's very kind of you. No problem. So I was shooting 2 videos. Now, yesterday I shot a video in my house by the baby grand piano. Okay. And I'm working with the 2 of them. One is I have an album called The 450s with the members of St. James and the lead singer from Young Turk. And we recorded this album in Miami. And Jack Douglas and Chris Collier mixed the album. And, of course, Chris Collier is Korn and including the Rods album and tons of other bands that are so great. Let me ask, Jack Douglas, was this the Aerosmith fame? This is the Jack Douglas, yes. Wow. Yeah, and so he was amazing as well. So we have that album, and so we're just getting everything together for that album for 2021 release. Yeah. And so I recorded a song called "Gracie Is It Heavy," and so I wanted that to be a darker kind of setting. But then I also and it's coming out now with Brad Sinsel, Bryn Ahrens. We did a song called Home for a While, and it's a killer track. And so what I did was I recorded my drums inside in my bathroom. Wow. And I recorded that track yesterday, and then today, and that's when I needed the extra time, so thank you again. I took my drum set out to my front porch. Wow. and we set it up, and my daughter, and I set up a couple of cameras, and my daughter shot handheld, and I recorded both songs again, but I recorded Home for a While outside because of that being so dark about being inside, but the song is really good, Wow. I'm sure there are a lot of COVID-19 songs, but I have to say this one is a really great one. And that's coming out very soon if it's not already out. Well, you let me know, and we'll help you promote that in any way we can. But getting back to that, I was kind of curious. A lot of people, because not able to go out and perform live, like they used to, a lot of people are doing stuff like that. They're putting it online. They're doing performance from the backyard, or having a Q&A or stuff. Have you thought about doing any of that, just to kind of see? Cannedy, funny you say that.
Yeah.
Cannedy's been invited to do a live performance for a major platform.
Wow.
We're really excited about it. So actually this Saturday and Sunday we're setting up Saturday, and then Sunday we're going to film a live performance, 35-minute show.
Oh, how cool is that?
So we're very excited about that.
Well, congratulations on that. And I do think with this COVID-19, people are looking for alternative ways to perform until it gets back to normal. I mean, I seen an advertisement recently. I forget where it is. I think it's somewhere in Europe. But Gary Hoey and some other musicians, they've been invited to like a drive-in theater kind of performance. And I heard a lot of people talking about doing things like that. So I think if you can't perform the old-fashioned way, they're going to find new ways to do it.
Yes, they're doing that in Europe, and I just had a call today because the Rods were scheduled to play an outdoor event July 3rd.
Yeah.
And that's been rescheduled maybe into August, but the way they were talking about doing it now is to do just that, to do it in either a drive-in or a huge parking lot area where people would drive in and the band would be on stage. People would stand by their cars. Basically a big tailgate party is what we're talking for all of these events like that. And you know what? It's going to be cool because
it is going to be
hear
different.
Live music, you know, and it's a little bit different. You're not necessarily together headbanging, but you're going to be, you know,
and it might be a little more intimate, a little more in your face, but nothing wrong with that, you know. And speaking about COVID-19, I got to tell you, Carl, one great thing about talking to you today about this new Cannedy album is a lot of people are putting off their releases that were already scheduled. Like Bon Jovi had an album coming out called 2020, and he decided, oh, you know what? Because all this stuff going, we're not gonna put it out till next year. We're gonna wait and see what happens with all this COVID-19.
Is he going to call it 2021?
Yeah, who knows? But my point is, I've been reading about a lot of bands kind of pushing their release dates back or not even doing it till next year. So the fact that you guys got this great new album and you're still putting it out there for people to check it, I think that's a cool thing.
Thank you. You know, I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. We talked about this, and we talked with our publicist, Chip, and, you know, I was the mindset that let's just put this out, you know, because we're a new band. Let's just put it out. Let the album, you know, speak for itself. Let the album find its own audience. There's never going to be a time when we're going to put this out where we're going to be competing with the major labels anyway. So let's do it, and let's just let it fall where it may. And it's been a great experience because it's been so well received, and I'm so grateful. And for you, Jason, it's the same thing. You know, you're keeping the music alive. We can't perform live. The only way people are going to know about Cannedy is information like this, with you promoting it and helping us get the word
out. I appreciate you saying that, but you know, from my perspective, it's out of a love of it for this type of music, you know. And I'll tell you, I'm an old school guy like you, Carl, in the sense that a lot of people listening to this, they won't even know what a record is, let alone a record store. I remember days of going to local tower records, and you could find almost anything in there. I'd spend hours in there. You know, they release all the new stuff on, I think it used to be every Tuesday. Now it's Friday. These days I'm getting most of my stuff either like off the internet or a lot of it through Amazon. But I'm a believer, you know, you gotta support the bands that you listen to. And the other thing is, a lot of bands, like we were saying, they're not even releasing new music. A lot of the bands, like, you know, nobody's buying CDs. We're just going to live off of our catalog of music we already have. That's why I say, even a veteran like you, it's great that you're continuing to put new music out there for your fans, because not everybody is doing that these days.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm glad we did. You know, I was a little bit concerned, but Chip has been a huge asset for us. And
I agree. And I'll tell you this. I think the smart thing about it, and you listen to a guy like that because he knows what he's talking about. From my perspective, I would think, okay, even if you can't tour behind it, maybe till next year, it gets it out there. People get a chance to live with it. And then by the time you are able to tour behind it, you know, you have a couple videos under your belt. People have lived with some of the songs, as opposed to, well, we're just going to not put this out till we can tour, and then nobody really knows the songs at that point.
No, that's right. And then we've done that as the Rods. Yeah. And, you know, you go out and then people don't know the new material. You wait a while and people know it, and suddenly you're out there and people are singing it. And there's nothing better live to see people singing your songs. That's, you know, we put every musician puts a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into what they do. And so when you see the crowd who has actually learned your songs and they love them and they're singing them back to you, that's a huge payoff for you as a musician.
Yeah, and as you know, being a working musician, Carl, all these years in a band like the Rods, I mean, like I remember, like, yeah, I've heard the Rods, I know the name. See, that's the thing, you guys have been around all these years, and you got your diehard fans, and a lot of people can't name a Rod song. That's
right.
And my point is, though, you guys have been out all these years. The name means something to some people, and at the same time, even back in the day when you guys were just starting, a lot of the metal bands and hard rock, we didn't have the internet back then, but we used to have things like Circus Magazine, and I can't even remember you guys ever being covered in anything like that. But now these days,
I don't think we were.
But nowadays, from time to time, you guys might be featured like in Classic Rock Magazine or something. But see, that's the thing about you guys being such a working class band. You survived all the trends. You're still out there doing it. You never got like a press darling. You're never on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, and yet you guys are still out there doing it.
Yeah, and I'm proud of that fact. David and I've been together 40 years now, and this 2020 is 40 years that we've been together.
Do you mind sharing with us how you and him first met? Because the thing I was going to ask is, you and him kind of been the two mainstays in the band, and I was kind of curious what you think has made you guys have such a tight friendship all these years.
We have never had we've had tense comments, and we've had
heated moments,
conversations, but we've never had any kind of yelling match or any kind of, not one time together. And David's a quiet guy, and he's very mellow, and overall, but I'm probably the more intense of the two of us, but in general, we've always been on the same wavelength, that we clicked musically, and so it's just been a good working relationship all the time, all this time. And
you guys are such a different type band in the sense, like you said, typically, the lead singer goes out and does the interviews, and he does from time to time, but you've been the guy to kind of do that mainly. Did that just kind of fall on you because you enjoy talking to people, or it was what you like doing, or did you so let Carl do it, or?
I think it's a little of both, Sometimes, sometimes people want to speak to David about the Rods, and they want to talk to him about his relationship with Ronnie.
Yeah.
Sometimes people want to talk to me about the Rods, and they want to talk about my early Man-O-War days, all my productions, Anthrax, Overkill, Blue Cheer, all the bands I produced, and they want to talk with me about that, as well as what the new things are we're doing. So it's always different, and we never stress. Whoever wants to do the interview, fine.
Yeah, I think it's a cool thing because a lot of times in bands, like, the singer will be the guy to do the interview, have one or two guys, and the other two guys don't get out there too much. And it's kind of interesting that you're the drummer. A lot of times, they want to talk, like you said, the lead singer, the guitar player, and you're real talkative and easy to. I've interviewed you a number of times, and you're really easy to talk to. And with the exception, maybe of a John Bonham or Carmine Appice, typically people don't want to talk to the drummer. And I think very much like Carmine Appice, you're the type of guy that, like I said, even if people watch your Warrior video, you're an over-the-top drummer. You play very much like Carmine as far as being a physical player. I even talked to him once, and he was telling me my whole thing about playing the drums is not necessarily I want to be a center of attention, but, a lot of drummers just kind of stay there, keep time in the back. He goes, I want people I want to be part of a show too,
That's right. And he does. And, I studied with Carmine early on.
Oh, wow.
And it was a huge thing for me in terms of it changed my drumming.
Yeah.
And he was a great educator. And I had one teacher who told me I was crap from when I first started.
Yeah.
Every week I would go to him, he'd tell me how horrible I was.
Yeah. And
I wanted to play match grip, and he would tell me that was wrong. So that was a horrible experience. So after 6 months or so of paying him, I thought, why are you paying this guy? You can find any of your local musicians, around here, they're all telling you suck. So why would you pay somebody? You get that you suck anywhere. So I didn't study. I just played and practiced hours a day, and I listened to records, and I taught myself. Then when I got to Carmine, when I was about 19, Carmine would say things like, that's wrong, but that's cool, so keep that.
Yeah.
And then he would say, but there's another way to play that, and less tension, and faster and so on. And so he was just huge for me. Besides taking me through some books and reading music, he was just huge in terms of his approach to drumming. One of the things I pass on to young musicians is that, if you're playing because you want to get laid, you want to get rich, you want to be famous, those aren't the best reasons to be playing. If you're playing because you love playing drums, you're going to be enjoying it your whole life, and that's where I am, because I'm doing more now. I'm recording with the band Colossus that I did my first album with in 1976, and we're still recording. We have almost an album's worth of material done. I have the 450s. We just recorded this album, as I said, in Miami. The new Cannedy band, and so. I've got a lot of stuff, and we're just going to start now in the next week or two working on the new Rods album. So,
how cool is that? Now, Carmine's a great example where we're talking, at the top interview about playing different styles of music. I mean, he's played with everybody from Vanilla Fudge to Rod Stewart, and in between, and Cactus, and he's still doing it. And he was a drummer for Rod Stewart for several years during some of his most popular recordings. And so he even co-wrote the song "Do You Think I'm Sexy?" So that's a guy that he's lived a life. So that's perfect guy to kind of learn from. And all those other guys that were telling you, you suck back then. I'd love to see what they're doing these days. But you've had a look at the career you've had yourself. So that says something about what they think.
Well, I think it's I can never thank Carmine enough for just all the drumming, because he's such a funky drummer. But him being such a great teacher, early on, it was just such a great influence on many levels.
And then, kind of getting back to, people wanting to talk to certain members of the band. I saw that Quiet Riot movie recently, and the bass player, Chuck Wright, that's been in the band for years, he actually played on that Mental Health album, and a lot of times he kind of gets pissed off about this because Rudy Sarzo's picture's on the cover of the album, but he plays most of the bass, and a lot of times fans will tell him, no, I don't want your autograph, I want Rudy's or something like that. He's like, he's not in the band. I played on. No, well, he's the one on the album. We want his autograph. Just kind of crazy stuff like that. And now, you also mentioned you were in the band St. James. So what's going on with them currently?
Well, the two brothers, Jim and Bob, are part of 450s, along with Rhett. The singer from Young Turk, and that's the album we did. And I can't wait for that album to come out, because I think there's just some great songwriting on that, and it's a great sounding album as well. It's a great record. And so
you have all these projects, so it must be fun, first of all, because it keeps you busy and occupied, and then to be able to have so many different they must be different sounding, so that's got to keep it fresh for you.
It does. The 450s is totally different from Cannedy, and which makes it fun. Great songs. I love it. I love those guys. We've all been friends. I produced St. James, and as it turned out, I was the drummer on St. James. We did 3 full albums trying to get them signed, and we were very close to getting them a label. And then 3 years ago, we released Resurgence, which was a bit of a compilation of their material. That we had done, really a sampling of it, and it did very well on the Sleazy Rider Records, the same label I've signed the Cannedy band to, and it did really well. And so there's more in the catalog. We're going to be releasing more, I think, from St. James. As far as whether St. James will record again or do another project, it's really up to Jim and Bob, because that's their band and their project. But as it turned out, unintentionally, I was the producer. I wasn't the drummer. Okay. But as it turned out, I played every drum track they ever recorded, not intentionally, but because their drummers were like Spinal Tap. They would just explode.
Amazing! Wow.
Just randomly explode. Some would come in, were really cocky. They'd wind up quitting. One drummer came in, and he'd be on the phone with his mother, and he'd have a little TV by his drum set while he's recording, because he was betting on games. And obviously, when you're that focused on something else, you're not really dialed into the song. So somehow, I wound up playing on every track. So it was a no-brainer when we got together to do this that I would be the drummer.
Oh wow! So before we wrap this up, I want to just ask you a few more things now. As far as you mentioned like Carmine working with him, but as far as some of your early influences as drum guys that kind of really inspired you to do what you're doing, who would you say some of your heroes were?
Well, early on, the drummers that really struck me that I really tried to emulate, and I learned as many of their licks as possible. Mitch Mitchell from Hendrix.
Oh, wow.
Carmine Appice. Obviously, Keith Moon, John Bonham,
wow.
Ginger Baker. These were all huge influences for me. And then, of course, Billy Cobham was a huge one. And, they're all the different versions of Billy Cobham, different stylistic drummers, over the years. But those were my main influences early on.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, those are all very heavy drummers like yourself. And then, like you said, when you got into producing bands like, Anthrax and Overkill, those are real, kind of really heavy, more over top drumming. So it's kind of interesting that you would also go on to produce bands like that.
Well, it certainly wouldn't. It didn't throw me a curveball. I was used to that. I also studied with Tony Williams, and that was a monster thing because Tony and I eventually got to a point where we would just talk. And I didn't know that he was intending to go to school for composition, to go back to school. But we talked, and there are a lot of things we discussed that I still apply to productions to this day. He has such a great approach to music and the pulse and the feel and the arrangement and so on, and just so many aspects of that, amazing guy. And,
it's kind of interesting, too, because, like I say, in certain bands, for the most part, the drummers were really not as heavily involved. Now, of course, all those drummers you mentioned, they're very heavily involved in the music they make. They're very flashy, very physical players. But let's take a band like Rush, for example. Take Neil Peart, who recently passed away. He's not even an original member. But he was, even when he passed away, he was kind of considered a new guy in the band. But
guy, I know. It's so funny because when you think of Rush, you just think Neil Peart. You don't think of anything but.
And it's kind of interesting too because being the new guy all these years, and then plus the fact that when you find out it's not Geddy Lee and Alex that wrote most of the lyrics, it's Neil Peart.
Yes.
Wow. And that's why I think they made the right decision when, they went on their farewell tour a number of years ago before Neil passed away or got sick, but they could have made the decision, okay, we'll just get a new drummer, but I don't think the fans would have been as accepting because Neil was such a huge part of that band and their sound, writing the lyrics. I mean, sure, you could bring another drummer that could write lyrics, but it would be so different from what they were.
I totally agree, and I want to say that, and of course, I've been to one of Mike Mangini's clinics, and he's phenomenal, and he's such a sweet guy, and I don't know him personally other than just meeting him for a second to say hi. But he's a monster player, and he was the right guy for Dream Theater.
Yeah.
But he's technically as good or better than Mike Portnoy, but he's no Mike Portnoy in Dream Theater in terms of when I listen to music.
Well, as far as I know about Mike Mangini, he's also played with Extreme and Steve Vai, so he's got his credentials too.
Oh no, he's a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
I think he's
No,
incredible.
I got you. I just
but I'm just saying that in terms of him fitting into Dream Theater, he's certainly, in my opinion, not elevating the band the way Portnoy's drumming did in Dream Theater. And I think another drummer coming into Rush might be a great drummer, and it could even be Mike Mangini. However, Peart's style Peart's style, however you pronounce his name, with the other guys, it would not make the same kind of sound that they did. And then, of course, lyrically, as you pointed out, who's writing the lyrics then?
And I will say this, too. We'll end on this. I'll say that another point I'm going to make here is I think because, you had been in the Raj all these years, if you were to suddenly leave the band and they were to carry on without you, I just don't think it would would work because, Carl Candy's as big of a part of that sound as David Rock Feinstein,
Well, thank you so much for that. And you know what? If that were to ever happen, I'd probably have to put those guys down,
Yeah. And and the last thing I want to ask you regarding the Raj is I seen a press release recently because for years you guys have been a three-piece band and that you've added a fourth member. Could you talk at all about that?
Yes, actually, it was an interesting thing because what happened was Gary decided that he was really no longer interested in touring.
Okay,
he wanted to retire from.
Makes
even
sense.
though he performed on Brotherhood of Metal, he wanted to be, retire from it. He didn't want to travel. As he said, I saw the world for the last 12 years, and I'm good. So, we miss him, and he was such a huge performer live.
Yeah.
But Freddie Villano was a no-brainer for us. Freddie's played with Quiet Riot and Dee Snider's Widowmaker. And Freddie and I have played on records together, and we've done live gigs together. He and I clicked very, very well from day one. So Freddie was a perfect guy. He's a great fit for us. Good, just a great fit for the Rods. But with David, we were looking at singers. We were looking at Jim Crean, and we were looking at.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so Jim, because we really, we like Jim a lot, and he's a great front man. And but what happened was I brought Mike up to rehearsal with me, and I said, just come and sing a couple songs. And Mike is the singer in Cannedy. And so while I was setting up my gear and working on stuff, he and David went into one of David's studio rooms, and they were in there for about an hour. Well, they came out, and he was the new lead singer. It was like done. They bonded on so many levels. They had so many areas where they had the same approach to music, they're just such a fit. And as I said, Mike is a philosophical guy. He's a mellow guy. He's a very intelligent guy. David's the same. And they just had the same approach. And once they had a conversation for an hour, we were, So John Gorman was also in the running for singer. We wanted to kind of work with everybody and see who was the best fit and if they liked us and so on. But as it turned out, that conversation just changed it all. And then when Mike sang with us, it was great. He was the right guy.
Now that kind of explains some of that. But David for years was kind of the front man. So did he want to focus more on guitar playing, or?
I think it was. David he would work with Ronnie for years, right? So he'd always been the guitarist with this great lead singer in front. Now David's still going to sing some things, and he and Mike will share vocal duties.
Cool.
They'll trade off verses and so on. So it's not like David won't be at the microphone. And of course, David, I call him the Right Reverend, Rock Feinstein, because he has to preach to the wild dogs. He's like at the pulpit, and. So he'll still be taking the mic. There's no,
Oh, that's cool because I'm a huge Kiss fan. That's one thing that I always loved about that band is you had Gene and Paul both trading off on leading vocals, and makes it much more interesting than just having one guy do everything.
Yeah, and that's what'll happen. So it's not like no one will ever hear David again. It's just going to be a little bit different. And we've also talked about possibly adding a keyboard player. So if we find someone, if somebody's listening to this and they think they're a good fit and they live near us, give us a call. But so we're just looking to take that next step, like Brotherhood of Metal. And on Brotherhood of the song itself, but also has keyboards. But this album has keyboards. And
after all these years, it's really gonna fatten up the sound. But I think that's why just talking to you, I'm gonna want to get that next album when it comes out, because just to see the new lineup and what it's like on record. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be exciting. I'll say this as far as adding keyboards. When people tell me keyboards suck and they don't belong in rock music, I tell people, I point them in the direction of Deep Purple. Look at what John Lord did on the keyboards, and then you tell me that,
Exactly right. And John Lord and that sound, and that was kind of the sound that we were looking for when we added keyboards to this album, was that John Lord kind of sound. And it works well, and, our roots are that, too.
Yeah.
David toured with Deep Purple.
Oh, wow.
Roger Glover and Ian Pace, they toured for a year with Elf, the first, when their album came out.
Oh, that's
and also,
right. I forgot about that.
Ian Pace and Roger Glover produced the first Elf album with Ronnie.
Yeah.
So, we all have roots. I was a huge Deep Purple fan. Ian Pace, he was another one which I didn't mention. There's so many, but Ian Pace was another huge influence. So we come from that, that's in our DNA, that music. And so to hear that in our music, it's a natural progression. So, and we wanted to make it a change, we wanted to move on and just up the game a little bit.
It's too bad you weren't able to get Jim Crean, but I think part of the reason for that is he's such a huge part of, Carmine Appice's band, And, it's kind of funny because I don't know if you know anything about Vinnie Vincent, the guy that used to be in Kiss, but he had a comeback after 20 years, and this promoter was trying to get him. They're going to do one show together with an all-star band with Jim Cream and Carmine, and Vinnie Vincent canceled it. And it's kind of stupid because I thought, a guy that's been away from the scene for 20 years, this is going to be a great comeback, and he canceled it because he didn't want the promoter telling him who to play with, and he's like, I want to put together my own band. I'm like, how stupid is that? I mean, these are great performers. When you haven't been on stage in 20 years, that would have been a great.
I heard about that, and I was shocked too. I thought, well, but again, isn't the music business has a lot to do with
business,
big ego, ego, inflated ego, and an unrealistic sense of yourself sometimes. I heard from a drummer who played with a band. I guess I shouldn't say anything, but he played with my friend.
Okay, well, leave it. Yeah.
So, but anyway, he told me, well, I'm huge, and they're still using my name, and a lot of people are seeing it in magazines still, and thousands of people have heard my drumming, so my new band is going to be huge because people know, and I'm like, they don't care who's playing drums. They care about the singer in the song, in the band. They don't care about your I mean, I would love to think that too, that, I played on all these songs and all these records, and people know my drumming, and boy, oh boy, anything I do, people are going to they'll know my drumming. Like, well, I'd love to walk around and believe that's true, but then, I'd probably wind up in some kind of padded room. But, some people have that sense of themselves, a little bit inflated, healthy ego.
And final question for the day.
It's a shame he didn't do it, because Vinnie Vincent's a great guitarist.
Oh, yeah, very underrated, but I think a lot of his ego has to do with that. I mean, very gifted songwriter also. I mean, when Kiss put out that Revenge album in 1992, is like the best thing they'd done in years, and they brought him back to do some of the songwriting, and then his ego got out of control again, unfortunately for him. But great stuff, great writer, great guitar player, and like I said, before we wrap this up, final question for tonight, Carl, is this: is there? This may be hard to do, but is there a band, a musician, an album, like let's say an album in your collection that you could point to and say, that's the album, that really influenced me. That's the album, means a whole lot to me.
There's so many, and
if you could just name one, because I've seen people making these lists.
I would say, Are you experienced? But like Cream, Disraeli, Gears, Are You Experienced? Fresh Cream. But I would say Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced was really huge for me. Jimmy's sound, Mitch Mitchell's drumming, that whole blend between the musical conversations they were having, it just blew me away. And then I was like, what's he doing? He was a jazz drummer, so I wasn't aware of anything jazz oriented. I was a rock drummer with doom bap. I didn't know anything more than that at the time, so it was wow, I want to learn this stuff. This is amazing. And
the reason I ask you that is because I've been interviewing guys lately, like about that have been making like these top 10 or top 20 lists on their Facebook page of these are my top 10 or 20 albums. And we've been discussing some of these albums, and like I interviewed this guy who plays in a Rolling Stones tribute out here in LA, and he was telling me my all-time favorite album, well, one of them anyways, is Jimi Hendrix's Axis Bold Love. Now that's an interesting album because if you're a fan of Jimi Hendrix and stuff like Purple Haze and Foxy Lady, that is so not that, it's so very different, but yet at the same time, like I was exposed to some of that other stuff, like I said, but I took the time to, listen to some of his stuff, and I was impressed with, even though it's so different from like Purple Haze or Foxy Lady, how great the music was. And another artist I got kind of turned on to was Edgar Winter. Like I'll say one of my all-time favorite classic rock songs, of course, Free Ride. But somebody turned me on to his White Trash album, and it sounds nothing like Free Ride, but great stuff. And I told the guy, thanks for turning me on to that.
Yeah, I love that Edgar Winter stuff. Dying to Live, and that album's a great album.
Well,
it's you're saying about Jim Crean, just to go back to that. Jim Crean, like hopefully he and I will do something together, if not with David as well. Yeah. Because it would be great to work with him. And I was sorry it didn't work out because I was excited about it, but
Yeah, I've talked to him over the years, and he's a huge talent in his own right. And I'm sure if you ask the guy, hey. Could we write a song with you? Could you guest on our album or do something with that? I'm sure he'd jump at the chance,
Yes, well, I guested on London Fog. I guested on played drums on one of his songs. Actually, I think with Freddie Villano.
Oh, wow.
The Rod's bass player. We think we both played on that, and it's cool.
Yeah. Well, Carl, I want to thank you for taking time to talk to me. It was really well worth the wait.
Jason, thank you.
So when you release any of that other stuff, get in touch with me, and we'll help you promote that as well.
Absolutely, and I just want to say for all the the wild dogs who followed the Rods all these years, thank you. And, check out Cannedy. It's CannedyBand.com, Canedy band.com. And, check it out. You can download the album there. You can pre-order CD and vinyl, buy a shirt. You can just check out whatever we're doing.
Just support the band. That's the main. Support the band. That's the main thing. And hey, Carl, do you ever see? Although it's probably quite a ways in the future, the day where you might do like a double gig, like opening with Cannedy and then headlining with the Rods.
I would love to do. I wouldn't want to do it back to back.
Yeah. Have a band in the middle. Yeah.
I mean, I know some drummers do that. I know. Some drummers and are out there doing it, and I wouldn't want to do that particularly for probably a number of reasons. But
physical.
I am. Not just even physical. I just I just stay there and wait for the other guys to come out. At the end of one show, it'd be kind of weird,
Wow.
But the thing that I am doing is, with the Rods, like hopefully there'll be some add-ons where if the Rods are playing somewhere, maybe Cannedy can come, and hopefully we'll be able to do some gigs like that where we'll play maybe an earlier time or we'll play another day at a festival or whatever. But I would love that.
Well, here's a final idea on that is since the singer's the same Mike, maybe you do the headlining thing as the Rods and close it out like with a Cannedy song or even open it up.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. There are a lot of possibilities, but big thing for me is that I want people to know that Cannedy is a band and that we plan on doing as many dates as we can live. I want people to hear how great this band is because I'm proud of it and I'm proud of the album. So Canedy band.com and check it out. And thank you for the support.
Well, thanks so much, Carl, and I'll be talking to you. If you could hold on just for a minute.
Sure.